Distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. May peace be on all of you. Welcome to today's program. I, Dr. Muhammad Naik, am your host for today. We thank the many Muslim and non-Muslim senior police officers, advocates, and intellectuals who have urged Dr. Zakir Naik to speak on this topic of terrorism and Muslims in a sensible manner. We also thank Justice Hosbet Suresh to have consented to be our chief guest today. Our chief guest, Justice Hosbet Suresh, is a former judge of the Bombay High Court who retired in 1991. A prominent human rights activist, he personifies the right blend of simplicity and righteousness. He regularly writes articles in the law journals as well as leading magazines and newspapers of India. His recent book, Fundamental Rights as Human Rights, is remarkable. He has spoken at many international forums. He is well known for his report on the riots in Mumbai in 1992-93, entitled The People's Verdict. As member of the Citizens Tribunal on the Gujarat carnage against Muslims, his report, Crime Against Humanity, released in November 2002 in Ahmedabad, is notable and very widely acclaimed. His reports on excesses against Dalits in Mumbai, students in Kerala, Christians in Gujarat, and others, too, are quite notable. An apt chief guest to address our audience today. Brothers and sisters, let's welcome Justice Hosbet Suresh.
Friends, I think I should begin with Lord Denning, a great judge from England, because he's no more. I'll just say what he said once. Judges do not speak as actors do to please. Judges do not speak as advocates do to persuade. Judges do not speak as historians do to relate the past. Judges speak to give judgments. I'm a retired judge, not a tired judge. I give no judgments, but I think I speak. And I believe in speaking. I speak against violation of human rights. I speak against wherever there is injustice, wherever there is violence. I speak against that. And I always expect the judges to come out and speak. If judges cannot speak against violation of human rights, injustice, who else can speak? It is the experience all over the world that every violence by the terrorists has only resulted in more violence by the state. It's a sort of vicious circle, and it can never bring about any lasting solution. In 1984, we had certain bomb blasts in Delhi and around Delhi. The Khalistanis, it was Khalistanis movement. Khalistani movement was very, very active at that time. The Khalistanis were terrorists at that time. So what we did, how to control the terrorists? We brought TADA law. TADA, the most draconian law. TADA has been misused, as you all know. And what all things happened under TADA law? Large number of innocent people were arrested, tortured, kept inside. I remember Justice Ajit Singh Bains, a retired judge of the Punjab High Court, elderly man. And what he did in a public meeting, he was talking of the oppression that was going on in Punjab, elsewhere. And he said in a public meeting, someday we will be free from this. Now, the TADA law had the provision for disruptive activities. Nobody could have said anything about disruption of this country. Nobody could have spoken about cessation of any part of the country. Nobody could have said Kashmir should get independence or some other part should be free. Nobody could have spoken about it. And if you say anything of the kind, that would be an offense. So when Justice Ajit Singh Bains only said, one day we'll be free from this, what he meant was free from oppression, free from injustice. What happened to him? He was arrested, handcuffed, a judge of the High Court handcuffed, paraded in the street and taken before the High Court. The High Court judges could not give bail. That was the law. Went to Supreme Court could not give bail. So he had to remain inside for nearly more than a year. What happened at the end of it? There was no case. This is the kind of thing, that was the law. Under Tada law, over 75,000 persons were arrested. They were all kept inside. No bail was given to them. And under the Tada law, the police could extract confessions, torture, variety of ways of torture, violence in torture, also things, and then extract confessions. And ultimately, what happened at the end of, when the Tara came to an end, sometime in 1995, you'll find, at the end of it, large number of houses, people suffered, all sorts of injustice. But at the end of it, 72,000 and odd persons were just released. No trial, no case, nothing of the kind. But they suffered injustice for months together, years together, inside the jail. And again, what is the conviction rate? Again, one conviction under Tada law was only 1.8%. So yet the Tada law had its effect. It made the police autocrats. The police could do whatever they liked, and none could do anything. The politicians could use Tada law for whatever they wanted, and they could arrest and keep any person behind a bar, and nothing could have been done. So in 1995, the law lapsed because there was widespread protest against this law. We all protested. Tada is a draconian law, and we don't want that kind of law. And it has not brought any terrorism down if you think of terrorism as such. So it came to an end from 1995. Then, of course, came 9/11, 2001. And what we did immediately, nothing happened in India. Whatever happened, happened in New York, World Trade Center. Yet Bush had announced, and immediately he said, there'll be a war against terrorists. And Bush had again said, those who are not with us are against us. And we wanted to show, oh, we are with America. We are with Bush. So what we did, we brought POTA. Again, what happened in POTA? It's a versatile law and hold-all law. You can arrest anyone under POTA. Again, the same thing happened, what happened under Tada law. And large number of people suffered. And they were arrested, terrorists or no terrorists, nobody knows what it was. This is the kind of law. Law was brought only to terrorize the people. See, this is relevant because today people do talk of POTA. They want a law like POTA after what happened on 7/11 in the trains in Bombay, or what happened in Malagaon 2 days ago. They say without law, harsh law, we cannot control terrorism. And I can tell you, harsh law had never been able to control terrorism anywhere in this country or anywhere in the world. Again, when POTA was there, as I tell you, POTA was being debated in the parliament. And what happened was, when the ordinance was being debated, there was an attack in parliament on 13th of December 2001. Thereafter, when the POTA was passed, in Calcutta, there was US Information Center was bombed. There came Akshardham Temple, sometime in 24th September 2002. Then came Raghunath Mandir, 24th November 2002. Then we had in Ghatkopar, Mumbai, Mulund, on 2nd of December. And then, of course, Gate of India, Zawari Bazaar, 25th of August 2003. So in spite of the law, whatever bomb blasts were continuing. And POTA had no effect on whatsoever. In the year 2002, according to a statement made by the Attorney General of India at that time, 4,038 terrorist-related violent incidents took place in Jammu and Kashmir. In spite of the army and other security personnel and the law, the number of terrorists killed on the spot in the year 2002 was 1,707, of which 508 were said to be foreigners. In Kashmir, the total number of people killed during the last about 17 years amounts to about 80,000. Thousands have simply disappeared. And this has happened in Punjab. Punjab also, when Khalistan movement was there, large number of people were disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to them. Till the other day, some years ago, they found the dead bodies, the skeletons on the side of the river Bias. I remember I'd gone there to conduct an inquiry. And what I noticed there was, I went around, talked to people, I went around, went to some houses. And in most of the houses, the elderly couple were there and the younger children were there. The in-between generation was not there. Nobody knows what happened to them. They were taken to the police station in the midnight, and next day they would not come back. And after 8 days or 10 days, they would be found dead somewhere here or there. This is a kind of law. So, question is, violence is a continuous thing, killing and counter-killing. In Kashmir, in Manipur, I went to Manipur, again the same thing. In Chhattisgarh, in Telangana, in many places, killing has been routine. The other day, the Prime Minister suggested we should have counter-terrorist wardens. What does it mean, counter-terrorist wardens? Who should be counter-terrorist wardens? You and I? We take the role of counter-terrorist wardens. I don't know. The Prime Minister suggested that. What happened in Kashmir? We made an experiment some years ago. We had arrested a large number of Kashmiris. They were all rotting in the jail. They were confined to the jail. And what we did was, our government said, brainwash them. Told them, you go back. And go back and tell the people they should not fight like this. They should be afraid. They should change their attitude towards India. Do that. But they said, if we go, we will be attacked. So the government, what the government did, we'll give them guns. So the people who went back were given guns. And I remember during one of those elections, our People's PUDR, the Democratic Rights Organization, brought a report. And there was voting at that time which said gunpoint, voting with gunpoint. There was an army, gunpoint from the militants. There was a gunpoint from the security force. There was a gunpoint from the military, from the other railway, other security officials. And there was a gunpoint by these people. Would that solve a problem? Violence against violence. Again, what we did in Chhattisgarh the other day. Chhattisgarh, there are Maoists are there, Naxalites are there. How to eliminate them? So we have started a brigade of tribals. Over 5,000 tribals were asked to join. And then they called it Salwa Junoon. And with the result, what happened was, all the tribals were killed, but the Naxalites are still there. This is the kind of thing that we are thinking. So what I'm trying to say is, not a single terrorist in this country has been tried or convicted. Nothing is of the kind. What we have done is only killing. In Bombay, for example, bomb blast took place in 93. Conviction, of course, still we don't know. Conviction, the real culprit, where are the real culprits, one doesn't know. Of course, people who have been rotting in jail for 13 years and so on. Tomorrow is supposed to be the D-Day, the Judgment Day. I don't know whether the judgment will come or not. This is the kind of thing. And again, you'll find in Akshardham, there was an attack. Again, who are the culprits? They were shot dead. In Parliament attack, who are the culprits? We don't know. We shot them dead. This is the kind of thing that we are doing. So we have only violence as in answer to violence. That is always the kind of thing. Even after 9/11, what did Bush do? He declared a war. War against whom? War against terrorists. War against Osama bin Laden. What did he do? He bombarded Afghanistan. He killed a large number of poor people. No one is sure whether Osama bin Laden was killed or not, but a large number of innocent people died. So also in Iraq, they said, okay, Taliban are in Iraq. They also said Iraq has got what you call weapons of mass destruction. No evidence of that. And yet, of course, in fact, the evidence has come, there are no Taliban also there in Iraq. And yet, what he did was bombarded, war against Iraq. Large number of innocent people died. The number lost to terrorist atrocities in New York, on the World Trade Center coming down, is less than a tenth of the toll in Iraq, that kind of killing. And it is not a war according to law. It is an unjust war, and not according to the international law. And everyone has a right to protest against that war. Anyone could protest. Anyone could condemn that kind of war. Be a Hindu, Christian, Muslim, fundamentalist, or otherwise. You have a right to protest. Just because we protest and condemn, we cannot be considered as terrorists. One of the most difficult problems is to define terrorism. See, we talk of terrorists. Where is the definition of terrorism? How do you define terrorism? Tada did not define terrorism. Porta did not define terrorism. Only terrorist acts were defined. And those acts could be even under the Indian Penal Code. They're not different. Murder, killing, dacoity, using guns, all are under the ordinary law. But at the discretion of the police, they can use it as an act of terrorism under Tada law. If it could be broadly agreed that the deliberate killing of innocent civilians, you find this kind of definition in the dictionary. If it could be agreed that the deliberate killing of innocent civilians is a central element in most definitions of terrorism, then in that event, the worst terrorists of the last century should be the USA for bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where suffering of large number of innocent people has never been healed even after 6 decades. Just killed lakhs of people in these two places. So also, the worst violators of the 21st century as it began are the USA and Great Britain. So the USA has a business of encouraging, killing everywhere. It gives them a market. It gives them a market for supply of arms. So also Lashkar-e-Taiba believe in killing. It gives them a market. So while both seek to wield power, one of course with the superior power of USA, and the other, of course, trying to build up his own other category of power. So it has become the global war. In this way, as again, terrorism becomes a permanent feature of these persons. In other words, the permanent feature of American policy is a global war. It will never come to an end. As long as the fear of terrorism is there, they're happy. As a result of this, what is happening in the rest of the world is that freedom and liberty gets curtailed. We are now gradually sliding into what is called a security society. Today, as you must have seen as we walked in, what happened to all of us? Everyone had to have a checkup. Because security, internal security. So we are going into a security society. Security is more important, not liberty. Your security. And then you must have read in the paper what is called Advanced Passenger Information System. You get into a plane in London. Within 15 minutes, your full history is sent to Bombay or whichever the destination. When you land there, the police are there. Police know your full history. You've gone to Dubai half a dozen times. Okay, that is enough. They could do anything they like. For example, what happened in Amsterdam, you all know, they saw some people behaving in the plane, people behaving in a very suspicious way. Their appearance, their dress, their speaking language, looking like Arabs, looking at watch frequently, bearded Muslims, and burqa-clad women. Okay, all these are suspicious character, this kind of thing. So security becomes more important. And this is a kind of policing that goes on. And as a result of that, we have all sorts of things that go on in this country, everywhere, because under security society, the police can do anything they like. Other day, you must have read that Antap Hill, somebody was found in a building which was supposed to have been neglected. Nobody was there. What happened was, the police suddenly found he was a Pakistani, they said. One doesn't know. They went and shot him, killed him. Nobody, no proof, nothing of the kind. So because in the name of security, the society accepted. Society did not protest. Who was killed? Nobody knows. So the police again believe in this guy because that helps them. They don't have to prove a case. They can detain anyone, keep him inside the police station, days together, without a charge, without anything, in the name of investigation. In fact, the other day, I went to the Minority Commission. What happened was, people are just being rounded up and taken to the police station. What is the law? If you are taken to the police station, if you are a witness, of course, your statement has to be recorded, and then you have to go home. If you are not a witness, you are a suspect, then your name should be there somewhere. Your name should be in the FIR, or they should have advanced information. But they just can't take you to the police station and say, you are a suspect, you don't know anything about me, but you are a suspect. You keep me, you torture me inside. You keep me for days together. No station diary entry, no report. And one fine day, you handcuff that man with another unknown person who's supposed to come from Pakistan. And they say, you are connected with these two together. This is the kind of system. So in the name of security today, police can do whatever they like. Anyone can be killed in an encounter, deaths, and no investigation. In the name of security, every movement of yours can be tracked. Your bank accounts, for example, your transactions, all come under the check. In the name of security, see, the other day the rule has come. In Bombay city, you can't sell or buy property. You can't rent out your house. You want to rent out, you have to go and inform the police officer. So the police have to be informed. So liberty is becoming a casualty. You are literally going to be enslaved. Soon, if this kind is encouraged, ultimately, you slowly, your rights are being taken away. Your liberty is being taken away. You are enslaved. This is a kind of thing. And I tell you, this is not something new. When TADA was introduced, also it was introduced for the sake of security. Even the Supreme Court, though it's a draconian law, unjust law, after Maneka Gandhi's case, nobody could have upheld that kind of law. Yet the Supreme Court upheld that law. Again, in the name of internal security. In the name of security, that's the main consideration. They upheld quota law, again in the name of security. They upheld Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which has done havoc in northeastern state, Manipur and so those places. Yet we upheld the law in the name of security. All our principles of the liberal society, justice, social, economic, everything, all those they have forgotten. This is a kind of approach. So therefore it is necessary, we must understand, this violence must come to an end. So what is the solution? Solution is not arms. Solution is not violence. Violence against me from the people or from the state. No. What is required is that why should there be so much violence in the society? Our approach should be why there is this kind of terrorism. What is the reason for that? That is the thing the government must understand. Not arms, not this kind of harsh law. I tell you, there is so much of injustice in the society. Go to any part of India, anywhere. So much of injustice. The rich and the powerful can get away with impunity. Nothing happens to them. America can invade any country, nothing happens to them internationally. Within India, the rich and powerful are not bothered. They don't go in for voting, but they get whatever they want. But the poor, what happens to the poor? The marginalized. Huge projects, for example. We have built huge projects. I got details of statistics if you want, I can give them. What happens to them? Narmada Dam is the simplest example. Came up. What happened to the people who are affected? Large number of tribals, what happened to them? They had lost their land, lost everything, yet nothing happened to them. What should they do? In Bombay, we have 40 lakhs or more people live in slums. What's the government doing? Government is demolishing them. Your right to housing, internationally recognized right to housing, right to shelter, part of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, international covenant, civil and political, economic, social, cultural rights. All this is forgotten. Supreme Court has said repeatedly in the past, Article 21, right to life includes everything that goes with human dignity. Your food, your clothing, your shelter, your health, your education. What are we doing today? Everything we are not bothering. The government thinks it is not his business. The government thinks it is not their job. They're slowly abdicating their responsibilities. In a situation like what should the people do? If you are thrown away from your house, you don't get justice in a court of law. What do? In Vidarbha, large number of people committing suicide. Repeated approaches, repeated appeals. Government is indifferent. Government is doing nothing. What should the people do? These are the questions. How do you answer? I remember once Arundhati Roy said, in a situation like this, where people get no justice, nothing happens to them. At that time, what happened to them is they refused to take this into account. I remember I went to Gujarat after the riots. Large number of young children have seen their mothers and sisters being raped and burnt. Nobody guided them. Nobody gave them education. Nobody gave them any psychiatric treatment or anything. The trauma was there. What should they do? Who gave them justice? Could the system give justice or not? I do not justify taking arms, but a government has a responsibility. The government must take it into account, because if you don't care for the victims will try to take care of things by themselves. And that is the point. And so what Arundhati Roy said was, when victims refuse to be victims, they are called terrorists. So you are all victims of the unjust thing that is going on in this country, in this society. Government must take a major role, not by bringing harsh law, not by creating counter-terrorist wardens, not by blaming a particular community or anything, not by doles, but taking care of human rights. Your right to food, your right to shelter, your right to education, right to health, right to a livelihood. If these things are taken care of, automatically there will be change in the society. I think that is the goal that I want to tell you. Thank you very much for giving me this chance. Thank you.